You've heard all of these great things about mindful eating and all the reasons why it really does actually matter and make a difference. But the question now is, how do you make a start? What are the maybe top 6 things that you could do to start on the journey towards mindful eating, making it a part of your everyday? Well, I've got the answers for you here now. One of the first things that many people recommend is to do a body scan, just something very quick. So when you're thinking about eating, whether it be a snack or a meal, to check in with yourself. And I find personally that it helps if I close my eyes to do this kind of check-in. You may be able to notice whether you feel hunger cues from your body, and it might be that you just notice that you're thinking about food. I'd really encourage you to ask yourself a few questions to check whether this is real hunger or whether this is mouth hunger or emotional hunger. And I put those two together. With real hunger, it normally comes up when you're close to one of your regular meal times because we're creatures of habit. We get used to eating at certain meal times, and that is then when our hunger comes on because our body doesn't want to get our digestive enzymes and so on going and then not get fed because that's not great for our health. So it is sort of pre-programs itself to get those ready when it knows that it's probably going to get fed. And that is part of the hunger cues that you will feel from your body if you do feel those, because I know that some of us, it's tricky. Another question that you could ask yourself is, could this hunger be satisfied by a number of different things, or is it very specific? Now, if it's very specific, then most likely this is a mouth hunger or an emotional hunger. For example, if your hunger could be satisfied by any kind of healthy food that you like to eat, whether that be some lean chicken or some beans or some nuts or something else entirely, something hopefully with lots of protein to leave you feeling satisfied, and some vegetables for all the benefits that vegetables bring them in terms of micronutrients and fiber and so on. If it could be satisfied by one of many different kinds of meal, then that's a good indication that this is real hunger. However, when you're suddenly, oh, I want that kind of cookie from that shop, then it's almost certainly emotional hunger or mouth hunger. If you are very specific and you want a very particular thing, it's a good indication that this isn't true hunger, that it's being stimulated by those emotional triggers and by the desire to have something that will feel comforting in one way or another. Another good clue that it's emotional or mouth hunger is if it comes on very suddenly. If you weren't at all hungry and then suddenly you're obsessively thinking about a very specific food, then that's definitely a sign that it is mouth hunger or emotional hunger. And of course, if you notice and realize that you are feeling emotionally upset, then that is also a cue and a clue to know that this is emotional or mouth hunger rather than being real hunger. So those are some of the questions you can ask yourself if you don't really have access to physical cues about whether or not you're feeling hungry. It may be that you do notice that, for example, your stomach is growling or you have a kind of achiness in the pit of your stomach, or however you feel hunger, because it can be somewhat different from person to person. Whether it is emotional hunger, whether it is real hunger, and whether you notice that through these more abstract questions or through the actual physical sensations in your body, it's a good thing to make a note of that before you sit down to eat so that you're more aware and can be more mindful. If you're answering real hunger cues, then you can also notice as those cues die down as you are feeding that real hunger, for example. A second really good approach to take with mindful eating is to make the food that you are eating more interesting. For example, I posted a video on eating breakfast mindfully for 30 days. And in that time, I had a really delicious and varied kind of breakfast where I would have a little bit of oats made into a sort of water-based porridge, and I would add different fruits into that and lots of seeds and nuts. And I went through a variety of coconut creams or coconut yogurts, coconut custard at one point because I was trying to avoid eating yogurt. So adding in some fats, some healthy fats, some proteins, some grains to make it varied both in texture and in flavor. I also, some days I would add frozen cherries, other days it might be frozen strawberries or frozen blueberries or a combination of those. Sometimes I had fresh fruit, whether that was melon or watermelon or something else. And so all of those things, if the fruit was frozen, then I would put it in the microwave and then it would be warm. So that would be a warm texture or a temperature for the food. The coconut yogurt or cream or custard would come out of the fridge, so that would be cold or cool. And the nuts and seeds were room temperature. It also gave a variety between sort of a creamy texture and things with a bit more bite and crunch. Some were more chewy rather than crunchy. So there was a lot that was going on there to make the food interesting. Obviously, it depends what meal you're having and where you are and so on. And I really encourage you to try and make your food as interesting as possible when you're eating mindfully, because it does make it more fun and easier to stay mindful because you notice, oh, in this mouthful I had that. Oh, in that mouthful it was a little bit different. So it's giving you things to notice in a pleasurable and joyful way, which is a good thing to help you want to stay mindful. The third hack that I found can make a difference as well is to serve food in the kitchen. One part of this is that it stops there being a kind of automatic seconds. And it also removes some visual cues around food so that you're not getting hungry through what you see. You're really able to stay with and be present with how you're really feeling, or simply to allow yourself to eat what you've chosen, that portion, and then stop. And if you're really hungry later on, then yes, you can have something else. However, when you see food, you may want to eat it just because. And so moving yourself out of the kitchen can be a good plan of action in order to avoid that pitfall. A really important way to help yourself with the mindfulness, as I've mentioned before, is to remove distractions, and in particular, to remove screens, so that you're not eating while reading emails or while watching something on YouTube, even this or whatever it might be. It's good to be present in the moment, and screens in particular are a great source of distraction and a great cause of dissociation. If you're with other people, you're still more in the moment, in the give and take and flow of conversation or whatever it might be. Whereas when you're with a screen, you become immersed in that, bound up in it, and therefore you tend to be a lot less present. So if you really struggle with that, one way of making a start might be to turn notifications off, for example, or have your screen with you still, but turned over so that you can't see it straight away. And if you could leave it in a different room entirely, well, that would be a great thing too. Another of my personal favorite hacks to help with mindful eating is to use some kind of psychosensory touch while you're eating. Now, this isn't always easy because if you need to be eating with knife and fork, then you don't have a hand free to apply the psychosensory touch, though you could have some kind of a massage tool if it sort of sits without you needing to hold it. But if you can eat something that only requires one hand, for example, as I say, I have a kind of porridge, fruit and nut bowl, and I can eat that with a spoon so that I have my other hand free to do some kind of psychosensory touch, either on my face or on my heart space, or possibly even on the hand that's holding the spoon in between mouthfuls. Some people recommend that you put down your cutlery between each mouthful. Personally, I find that feels a little bit fake and can be a bit clattery, and if you're eating with other people it can feel a little disjointed, but then equally you're probably not going to do psychosensory touch if you're eating with other people either. In any case, I really find that the psychosensory touch is very helpful. For one thing, it helps to lower your stress levels so that you can stay calm even with something that might feel challenging at the outset. For another thing, it works to help lower your ghrelin levels, your hunger hormone levels, so that you can feel more satisfied more quickly and perhaps notice that while you're eating mindfully. It also helps to put you into a more creative and open state of mind, which is a good place to be when you're trying something that's somewhat new and when you're trying something that might, as I say, be a little challenging. So for all those reasons, I almost always use psychosensory touch if I'm alone, when I'm focusing on a meal and eating it as mindfully as I can. And finally, there's the first 3 bites rule. Set yourself the challenge or the intention to eat at the very least the first 3 bites of that meal or snack completely mindfully, totally focused on the food. It sets you up with a good start to help you slow down, be more mindful, be more present, and enjoy your food. Even if you don't then manage to be 100% mindful or 100% focused on the food for the entire meal, it will still have improved a little bit how you approach the food and hopefully how you feel about the food. And this leads into a bigger point, which is that when you eat even one meal a day mindfully, I think you'll start to notice mindfulness coming into your other meals as well. You become more used to actually thinking about your food. You become more used to feeling okay with noticing that you're eating and how it feels as you start to feel a little fuller. You can enjoy your food more. And you'll also notice more when you're not being mindful, because you know what it's like when you are mindful. All of these things mean that even if you're only setting yourself the challenge to eat one meal or snack a day mindfully, that mindfulness is likely to spread out into the other meals and the other food that you eat, and that can only be a good thing. 2 last bonus tips that I would like to remind you of, perhaps. The first one is to be present. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to focus 100% on the food, but at least that you should be present with yourself, with your emotions, with your body, with your environment, and hopefully also with your food. All of those things can help you to feel more grounded, to stay more present, and to feel better, as well as laying down memories more clearly while you're eating. The second bonus tip is, please remember, this is about progress. This is about practice. You do not have to be perfect. You may never be perfect, and that is okay. We humans are never really perfect. So allow yourself to play with this, to practice it, to try it, to experiment with things. Try and take it a creative step. How can you change what you're eating? For example, it can be very good to have several different things within your meal. And so one forkful or mouthful or spoonful could have elements 1 and 2 in it. The second mouthful could have elements 3 and 4 in it. The third mouthful might have element 1 and 4. And so you are curating your own meal. You're being playful and creative with the food. And that can be a very joyful thing to do. it can keep things interesting too. So why not give it a try? And remember, it really is about progress, practice, playfulness, not perfection. I'd love to hear which of these hacks and tips for eating mindfully you're going to try out first. And if you're not 100% sure about where to start, well, I've got another video coming up about that, so check that out.